book lovers, it is GSwiz here, and I'm here today to talk about my favorite ships that I read about in 2023. If you didn't know, this is inspired by a 7 on Sunday topic, and I am the host of 7 on Sunday. I will link the GOODREADS page down in the description where you can check it out and you can participate in a topic in the future, or you can suggest a topic. And I say inspired by because the original topic for this 7 on Sunday was to talk about our favorite characters of 2023. But when I was compiling the list for that 7 on Sunday topic, I just noticed that I would mention one character and then a love interest, and then another character and then a love interest, and then another character and then a love interest, and it got to the point where it just purely became ships. And you know what? I'm not gonna lie, I see that as a good thing. I reckon I've read about so many great relationships this year that I cannot help but feature all these characters on this list today. So I've decided to make this a ships video. It's not a Valentine's Day topic, but you know what? I don't care. I'm just gonna wrap this year up talking about my favorite ships because I love talking about ships. I do love talking about individual characters, but in this instance, I just had way too many ships that I adored this year, and more ships that I adored than actual individual characters, which is very funny. Anyway, so I guess without further ado, I'm gonna get straight into this list of ships. I'm gonna talk about why I love them so much and try not to go too much into spoilers because I want you guys to be able to enjoy these books as well if you read them eventually. The first lot of ships that I have to mention, I've got to be very vague about because I don't want to spoil who gets with who in this series, but I'm just gonna say all the ships in the Savage Land series, I love them so much, and you only really know who ends up with who by the end of the book series. I mean, there is one central ship, yes, but there are some side ships as well that I love just as much as the main ship, and I do love the final book in the series, Shadowlands, because it explores all of those ships. However, that all being said, not every ship happens successfully in this book series. I am not going to spoil anything, so I would encourage you to manage your expectations if you are planning to go into Savage Lands, but I just really loved all the ships in the series. I have to be very vague about it. That's why I'm just like getting it out of the way. I can't stop thinking about them and I just want all the happiness for them. However, a ship that I can talk about is Cigna in Death from Belladonna by Adeline Grace. I read this book this year. I fell in love and I love these two characters so much, and I find the character of Death to be absolutely fascinating because he's not necessarily evil. He is essentially just doing his job as a Grim Reaper. He just has a tragic life, even though he's deaf. You can totally see how him and Cigna have a connection, and I really do appreciate the chemistry that Adeline Grace wrote in both their characters because they just work so well together. I cannot stop thinking about these two. I cannot wait to continue on with the series. I have put the series on hold for personal reasons. I needed to read Belladonna at a time where I was grieving, and I decided to put the rest of the series down because I just want to enjoy it for like the piece of fiction that it is, because yeah, Belladonna did hit differently. It did make me feel emotional, and I think if I can distance myself from this book series while I try to get out of a very emotionally vulnerable state, then I might be able to enjoy the series for the story even more. I love these two characters so much, and I do want to get even more invested in their romance, so I'm hoping to do that in the new year when I get to Foxglove and Wisteria. And the next ship that I have to mention in this video today is a ship that actually inspired the title of this video. I was initially going to call it my favorite couples of 2023, but this series right here kind of doesn't have a couple. It does not have a main couple. It's a why choose situation between the protagonist and 5 guys. But specifically, I want to highlight Ollie, North, and Griffin. Those 3 are my favorites. They are my favorites together. I do appreciate the other bonds. Like, I do like them for their own journeys and their own stories. Initially, I thought that Atlas was going to come out as my favorite. And yes, Atlas still has a very special place in my heart. But Griffin, I'd have to say, is kind of my favorite. But then North also comes very close. And then Ollie is like probably one of my favorite characters of this year. I absolutely adore her. And I'm just so happy to see all 3 of them together. I'm so happy to see her happy with everyone in this book series. But those 3 together, every single time they get page time together, I just honestly live for it. I get so excited and so giddy to see those 3 on the page. Their 3 personalities all together just gel very well. I feel as if they have the most chemistry out of the rest of the characters in the series. I still appreciate all the bonds, and I still stan all of them, kind of. I mean, yeah, I'm a bit iffy about Nox, and I did find Gabe to be a little bit annoying, but So there's that. But overall, I'd have to say the throuple of Ollie, North, and Griffin are my favorites, and they are my babies, and I would want to protect them at all times. And the next ship that made my favorites list is a very interesting ship because these two aren't necessarily together yet. I mean, they are a pairing. Okay, let me explain. Bewitched by Laura Falasa. This is a very interesting dark romance situation where the protagonist had no idea that she was married. I believe she was married or she was betrothed. I'm trying to remember. So this mystical figure all of a sudden appears in her life after she finds his tomb. She sets him free. He's like, oh my goodness, it's my wife. And she's like, I have no idea who you are. But at the very same time, Memnon, who is the male main character slash love interest, he is quite morally gray. He's kind of like the Four Horsemen in the sense that he wants to conquer, and Celine doesn't necessarily stand for what he stands for. I mean, she doesn't fully understand what's up with him. But yeah, he seems to be on the dark side. A little bit too dark. I'm very much looking forward to continuing on with the series because these two characters just kind of worked together very well for me. I don't know, I think the dynamic of her not knowing who he is, but her also not kind of trusting him, and him being helplessly in love with her, but also he has a dark side. It's just so interesting. It makes for a compelling dynamic. It very much reminds me of the Fallen World trilogy by Laura Falasa, and kind of reminds me of the Four Horsemen series. I've noticed that Laura Falasa does a lot of dark romance, but I started off with the Bargainer series, which just so happens to be probably the healthiest romance that Laura has written about. So after starting off with the Bargainer series, it honestly shocked me going into the rest of Laura's works, because almost every single one of her other romances are very morally gray. Like, they walk the line. I am very curious to see how the rest of this series is gonna go. I cannot help but want these two to be happy, but at the very same time, I'm very much looking forward to seeing how Celine is gonna come into her power. I reckon that she's gonna come into her power and she's gonna put Memnon in his place. They're still gonna be in love. I don't know, it might be tragic, maybe? Who knows? Laura might go a different route, but what I do know is that Laura likes falling for the villain, and she wants us to fall for the villain. I honestly don't think that the other love interest choice that was presented in this book is going to be endgame with Celine. You know what? I made this list, I totally forgot. I have another book that I did not put down. I really do need to talk about the main ship in the Hurricane Wars. I cannot believe that I did not put this book down on the stack of books that I was going to talk about. These two have such an interesting dynamic. They're not necessarily together yet. However, you kind of know that they're either going to be endgame or the series is going to end off in tragedy, but they're still going to be in love with each other. I really don't know how the series is going to progress, but what I do know is that this dynamic had a lot of chemistry. Taliesin and Alaric, their romantic tension was so thick. I'm still blown away by these two and how attracted they were to each other, but at the very same time, how much they wanted to stay away from each other. I love that trope so much. You know, when you're completely obsessed with someone because you hate them so much. And I'm going to talk about another ship that does that very well later on in this video. But the Hurricane Wars does that very well. And you know what? There's barely any steam in here. It's purely tension. And usually the slow burn and the tension, I can see myself getting tired of, especially if the book is this thick. I'm pretty sure this book is like over 500 pages. Yeah, this is an over 500 page book. But I was invested. I was hooked. I honestly did not care whether or not these two characters had a steamy scene with each other. I just needed more and more interactions with them. I needed them to be in the same room. No matter how spiteful they were to each other, I was living for it. I really was living for it. And you know what? I got that out of the Hurricane Wars, and it was something that was beautiful to see. Even though, yes, the slow burn is painful, it was honestly unlike any other slow burn romance I've read before. And look, this is just book one. I cannot wait for the rest of the series, and I don't know how the rest of the series is gonna go. I'm kind of hoping that it goes on the upside, but I mean, there are other slow burn ships that have burnt me before that I reckon this could resemble eventually. I really hope, fingers crossed, this series does not end in tragedy, because I just want these two to be happy forever. And now I'm gonna bring up a ship that makes me absolutely happy, and I just finished this book as I'm talking right now, and I am obsessed with Rhea and Orpheus from Assault to Cape. This book is so good. If you love Beauty and the Beast and if you want to try monster romance out, this is your book. I am so impressed with Assault to Keep. I mean, I knew I was going to like it, but I did not realize how hard it was gonna slap, you know? Like, this book really slapped hard, and I'm actually just really happy that I have a personalized edition of this book because, oh my goodness, this is one of my favorite books of all time now. I am seriously so happy that Abby read this earlier this year to confirm that this book was absolutely incredible. It definitely helped me put this book higher on my TBR, and I'm really happy I prioritized it and finished it before the end of the year because this is definitely one of my favorite books of 2023, and Orpheus and Rhea are definitely one of my favorite ships of 2023. They are just so perfect, and I think I appreciate the story so much because it resembles Beauty and the Beast, but even in the book they reference Beauty and the Beast and they talk about how Belle kind of gets lucky by breaking the Beast's curse, but in Rhea and Orpheus's situation there is no curse to be broken. Orpheus will remain in this form and Rhea has to choose to see beyond that, and over the course of the novel Rhea starts to fall for who Orpheus truly is, and she loves him for his kindness and compassion and just the fact that he always looks after her and she wants to look after him in the same way. She starts to really love life with him and they just enjoy life with each other, and Orpheus is just so sweet. He's so wholesome, and unlike Beast from Beauty and the Beast, he actually is not like all that bad. Yes, he's taking on a bride, he's taking on a human bride, but he also empathizes with whoever he's taking. He wants to make sure that they are safe, they're comforted, they're treasured, and that he doesn't scare them. And he's just so considerate. My goodness. This was just really wholesome. And I think Abby fully proved that if you are not into monster romance, but you want to start somewhere, or if you're curious about the subgenre of monster romance, this is a great place to start. I love this book so much. I love the world that Opal Rain built, and I cannot wait to read the rest of the books in the series. I love that this is going to be a 9-book series. I'm so excited to follow 8 other romances in this book series because I could not get enough of this. I definitely want to go back and reread this book eventually. Rhea and Orpheus, I'd say, are definitely the most wholesome pairing that I have out of this bunch. I mean, I do have a few other wholesome pairings, but when I think about wholesome pairings, I think about these guys first. I really do. And you know how I mentioned earlier that I cannot help but love the hate to love / obsession trope, you know, where characters hate each other, but also they cannot help but be infatuated with each other? Yeah, I kind of got that in the Demon Queen Trials by C.N. Crawford. I love this trilogy so much because throughout the trilogy, these two characters cannot stand each other, but they also can't stand to be apart from each other. Like, they are just so fascinated in one another, but at the very same time, they feel threatened by each other. It's just a very interesting dynamic, and I would say this is the paranormal new adult equivalent to The Cruel Prince, in a sense that we are following two characters who are constantly at odds with one another, but cannot help but love each other. And it's honestly incredible to see. I cannot stop thinking about this book series. I think this is definitely one of the first book series I read on this list. I think it is, maybe? It's either this one or the Bonds That Tie series. Yeah, these two book series I started the year off with, and then I moved on to some of the other book series / ships. But yes, Rowan and Orion live in my mind rent-free. I can't stop thinking about these two. I devoured this book series within like 1 or 2 days. It was a very quick read for me, and I still can't stop thinking about these two to this day. And I promise that none of these ships are in particular order. Honestly, I love almost all of them somewhat equally. However, I do have to mention that these two right here, Gedsavanh and Thiago, they made me believe in love more than I ever did before. These two are so beautiful. If you guys don't know, this story is a Hades and Persephone reimagining. I'm not gonna go into full details about like how the reimagining works, but I'm just gonna say this right now. The devil works hard, but Thiago works harder. Thiago goes through so much in this book series, and yet he remains to be a cinnamon roll. I don't understand it. I don't get it. I personally think that Thiago deserves to carry as much bitterness as he possibly can, but he chooses not to. He chooses to be loving throughout everything. And I'm not saying this because Gedsavanh is being unfair. I'm not saying that at all. It's just their circumstances are terrible, and I can't spoil what happens in this book, or I cannot spoil the actual plot of this book because it's very complicated, and Thiago goes through a lot, but Isvan truly recognizes how much he's gone through. And I love that over the course of the series, Isvan wants to pay him back. She wants to give him everything. And she becomes a warrior. And she did not see that in herself. She saw herself to be much weaker than some of her family members. And I love that she finds her strength. She finds the strength within herself to fulfill her duty and her mission. I love these two so much. I definitely think that Thiago and Isvan are one of the most healthy romantic couples I've read about. These two made me believe in love so much more than I used to. I can't stop thinking about it. This book series kept me up at night. But speaking of book series that kept me up at night, the War of Lost Hearts series, I'm gonna be talking about Max and Tysania. I love these two so much. And I think if anything, these two make a very wholesome pairing. Before reading A Soul to Keep, I would say that Max and Tysania's relationship was probably the most wholesome relationship I read this year, because they are able to find wholesomeness in the midst of utter chaos. And this book series is very chaotic. And I understand that not everyone reads this book series for the romance. I don't think that the romance is the main draw of this series, but Max and Tysania just so happen to be an amazing couple who look out for one another. Both of them have gone through such harsh struggles, and honestly, the fact that they both went through such dark and terrible pasts just makes you want to root for them and their happiness even more, individually and together. And every single time one of them got hurt and the other did everything they possibly could to save them from what they were going through, it not only made me swoon, it made me cry, because the situations that happen in this book series, they're very terrifying, they're very realistic. This book series also made me believe in love like none other, but not just the love that you can have for someone romantically, the love that you can have for others, the love that you can have for humanity. I've been thinking about this book series a lot recently, and I've been thinking about this concept. I'll probably bring this up in my top 23 video of 2023 and why I love this book series so much. I realized that this book series gave me the same feeling that some really good comic book stories or really good superhero movies gave me. It gave me a passion to look out for humanity, like nothing else does in fantasy romance, but it's how superhero stories used to make me feel. That's how I feel about this book series. I'm just gonna leave it at that. I will talk about this book series a lot more, trust me. But I could talk about this book series for days. Max and Tarius and Tysania are an amazing pairing. They're not the only reason why I would recommend this series, but if you are wanting to start off the series with a beautiful, wholesome romance blossoming between these two, then I would recommend you pick the series up. But I would also just recommend everyone pick the series up for multiple reasons, because it's just a perfect series. And last but certainly not least, I'm going to mention Finley and Naife from the Deliciously Dark Fairy Tale series. They are two of my favorite characters of this year. Naife is one of the most beautiful beast-inspired characters I've read about. I know I've just talked about Orpheus, and it's been like around 6 months since I've read about Naife. It was very refreshing to see a character like Orpheus in A Soul to Keep, but it was also very refreshing to see a character like Naife in the Deliciously Dark Fairy Tale series by K.F. Breene. I also very much appreciate Finley. She's definitely a different kind of belle. Like, yes, she is attractive to some characters in the series, but first and foremost, she is a fighter. I would say if there was any character that resembled their character in Beauty and the Beast the most, it would probably be Naife in a way. Not because Naife is terrible like the Beast was terrible, but you can see his beast-like qualities there, and you can see that he's doing his best to work things out and to kind of break the curse, even though he feels very resigned. Like, he starts off the series very resigned, and I love that Finley comes in and she has a determination to make things right. But overall, I just found their romantic dynamic to be absolutely beautiful. I find it very interesting that Naife did not really get much of a POV in the series. Like, we got the POV of some side characters, but Naife always kind of remained a mystery. But what I find interesting about that is that K.F. Breene was able to truly convey how much he loved and he cared about Finley through the eyes of everyone else. Like, we didn't have to go into Naife's head to truly believe that he loved and he cared about Finley. He truly would do anything for Finley, and you can see that through the eyes of the other characters. And I love that, because even though that technically feels like telling rather than showing, in a way, it was showing rather than telling. These two, I love. They are definitely another reason why I did make this a ships video rather than a characters video, because every single time I talk about this book series, I need to bring Finley and Naife up. I just personally think that these two are strong and they are better together. I do love them individually, but I love them together, and that's why I have to give them the praise that they truly deserve. So I guess that's gonna be it for this video today, book lovers. If you happen to stay till the end of the video, leave me the red heart emoji, because right now I'm feeling the love, I'm feeling the romance. Just thinking about these ships just makes me happy. And if you happen to enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet already. Join the amazing community of book lovers. And also, I have social medias. I'm at gswizzelbooks on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm also Goodreads. That's www.goodreads.com/gswizzle. And finally, I'm at TikTok. I'm at gswizzle on TikTok if you want to follow me there for some bookish content. I love you, book lovers, and I will see you later.
Started out with half and I flipped it into double. Started out with half and I flipped it into double.